Okay, so chapter 8 is about again respiratory system in humans. Humans, the typo here, and animals. So we're going to cover 8.1 for today, which is the types of respiratory systems and their adaptations for gases exchange. All right. So, okay. So before that, you need to know that we had learned in chapter, what is it? I mean, it's a chapter 2, I think, because we had learned about unicellular organism. Unicellular organism, it has they have large total surface area to volume. So in this entire discussion, I'm going to use terms TSA over V. Okay, TSA over V meaning that a total surface area to volume. So small organism has large TSA because they have a small volume. All right. Since that is why they do not need respiratory system. So you know respiratory system is means the gases exchange. So whenever this small organism or unicellular, can you give me an example? What is unicellular organism that you know? Anyone?
Amoeba.
Amoeba, yes. Amoeba is a unicellular that doesn't need a respiratory system because when they need oxygen, the oxygen that just diffuse into the cytoplasm, and then the carbon dioxide will diffuse out directly from the cytoplasm. Teacher cuba lukis lah. Okay, so this is the amoeba, and then the respiratory system, it doesn't need respiratory system because the intake of oxygen and the outtake of carbon dioxide just through a simple diffusion. Okay. Okay. So maksudnya dia berlaku di directly macam dia tiada sel lain since this is a unicellular. So simple. But kejap. For a large organisms, we are considered as a large organism. We have a small total surface area to volume. Okay. As we have a large volume. All right. So that is why we need or they need a respiratory system. Kita tidak boleh directly macam amoeba. It doesn't goes like this. Like this is us. Orang lidi lah kan. Kita tidak pergi from our skin directly kita boleh dapat oxygen. Same goes to the carbon dioxide. Tidak boleh being released directly from our skin. We need respiratory system. Because, why is that? Because we have this small TSA over volume. All right. So far, so good.
Yes.
Okay. So in this chapter, we're going to focus on humans. So humans are large organisms. So we're going to focus on the respiratory system in humans and animals. So saya punya cursor ni. Okay. So in order to do an efficient gases exchange, when I said gases exchange, bear in mind it means the intake of oxygen and the release of carbon dioxide. Exchange, mesti ada pertukaran, mesti ada in and out. Okay, so in order to have an efficient exchange of gases, we need to do, or not we need to do, we have this adaptation of respiratory structure. Okay, first of all, what is respiratory structure? Respiratory structure, the easy one is, we take example like us in our body, human. Our respiratory structure is our trachea, bronchial, alveolus, in our lungs. That is a respiratory structure. Okay, respiratory is a process. Structure ni macam structure lah, tempat di mana berlakunya. Organ tu yang organ yang terlibat. Alright, so this respiratory structure need an adaptation. What kind of adaptations? Okay, I make it simple as this. Okay, as you can see, it's actually not a one word, it's actually a combination. Okay, and you can see I use a different color. Let's say for large TSA over V. Okay, large TSA over V is in one color, that is a green color, and then T is a purple color, M is in the blue, and net is in red. So this is for purpose of easy to remember, supaya senang ingat saja sebenarnya. Okay, large TSA, TM net. Okay, what is this? This is a point where how the adaptations of respiratory structure happen. Let's start with the first one, which is large TSA. So large TSA means it has a large ratio of TSA. What is TSA? Total surface area over volume. Okay, so the first one, this respiratory structure must have a large large ratio of TSA. The first adaptation. Okay, kenapa teacher highlight warna biru? Meaning that each time you want to explain about this adaptation, we must start with the large respiratory structure. Okay, let's say for the first one, large respiratory structure must have a large ratio of total surface area to volume. Okay, satu. And then the second one, T. Respiratory structure must have thin, okay, thin as one cell thick. Thin membrane lah, thin membrane. Cikgu lupa masukkan di sini. Okay, meaning that respiratory structure ni, it must be thin as one cell thick. Maksudnya satu sel saja ketebalan dia. Okay, why is that? So it will make the gases exchange more efficient. Maksudnya dia tidak perlu gases tidak perlu diffuse too many layers of cell. Dia perlu diffuse one cell thick saja, a thin membrane, so it easy for the gases exchange. Boleh?
Boleh.
Okay, and then M. M stand for moist. So the surface of respiratory structure must always moist. Why it need to be moist? So that these gases can dissolve. Bila they dissolve and then easy to diffuse. Okay. So this is about a respiratory structure. It must be large TSA, thin, moist, and the last one, net. Net stands for network of blood capillaries. So this respiratory structure must have a network of blood capillaries. Mesti banyak. Network ni maksudnya banyak kan, jaringan. Macam net. Kalau dia macam single satu satu garis blood capillaries saja memang lambatlah gases exchange. So it need to be in a form of network of blood capillaries. Except for insects. Sebab insect dia tiada blood. Okay. So anything yang ada blood ni, it will have the respiratory structure must have a network of blood capillary. So shortcutnya secara kesimpulannya, what are the adaptations of respiratory structure? Large TSA, TMNet. TSA over volume, TMNet. Ni adalah dia punya elaborations, the explanations, each of that. Boleh?
Boleh.
Boleh.
Okay. Now, so in these slides, I'm going to show you there are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 types of respiratory structure. So the first one, this is Mr. Grasshopper here. He is representing insect. Okay, this is the real picture before we look to the diagram, 2D diagram. So this is the real picture. We can see, not very obvious actually, but insect, as I told you, insect don't have blood. Okay, what is the function of blood? Blood is like a medium to transfer the nutrient, oxygen and all that. But you can see that insect, how the oxygen is being transferred. Ada seperti tiada blood kan? Jadi macam mana oxygen to being transferred if there's no blood in grasshopper? Later on we're going to look. So as you can see, you cannot see here. Okay, tapi nanti just in case you have the opportunity to grab one grasshopper yang besar lah, kau boleh observe. You can look at the the external appearance yang di luar kamu boleh tengok. Because this grasshopper or aka insect, okay, they use a system of tracheal system. Okay, tracheal system. Ingat tak? Teacher tidak sempat tulis tadi. Sistem untuk insect, they use a tracheal system as a respiratory system. Sistem pernafasan untuk insect ialah tracheal system. Okay, and along the body there, we have this spiracle. Sepanjang badan dia ada spiracle. What is spiracle? Spiracle, it has a small pore, ada lubang kecil. Di situlah tempat where the oxygen is being taken in, tempat oksigen tu masuk. Kalau compare dengan kita manusia, oksigen masuk dari mana? Mostly daripada, of course daripada hidung, our nose and our mouth, oksigen. Tapi insect, it happens along the abdomen, sepanjang badan dia. As long there's a spiracle, di situlah ada boleh masuk oksigen. And of course, the, pengeluaran ataupun the release of carbon dioxide di sini. Okay, yang ni spiracle ni sepanjang badan dia ada bulat-bulat kecil ni, ini dia zoom in. So this is spiracle and then there's an insert of oxygen, okay, and then the release of carbon dioxide directly go to the trachea, and this trachea will branch out, become tracheole. Nampak macam sama dengan manusia kan? We do have this trachea, tapi we don't have this tracheole. We have bronchus and bronchiole. But for insect, from spiracle, directly to trachea, branch out to tracheole. And this tracheole yang connected with the body cell. Body cell ni sel-sel badan insect lah. Alright, so okay, there's a large TSA TMNet there. Okay, why is that? Because we want to discuss about the adaptations. We know this is the structure, so what are the adaptation? These, what we call it, large number of subtracheals. Subtracheals ni dia branch out kan, jadi maksudnya dia akan ada banyak. So this large number of tracheals will provide the large total surface area to volume for gases exchange. Maksudnya lagi banyak cabang-cabang tracheal ni, lagi banyak pertukaran atau gases exchange. So it's apply the number 1 adaptation. Okay. So and then T tadi apa?
Thin as one cell.
Yes. Thick as one cell, thin as one cell thick. Dia nipis kan? So this tracheal is thin, nipis as one cell thick. Setebal satu sel sahaja. Dia macam words tu bingung-bingung sikit sekejap, thick, thin macam tu. Okay. So thin. And then M also applies in tracheal. M tadi apa?
Moist.
Moist. So this tracheal is moist. So it's allow oxygen gas to diffuse into the cell while carbon dioxide is diffuse. Okay, so actually tadi yang adaptation kita cakap large, TSA, thin and moist all applied in tracheal. For what? For a better gases exchange. Okay, tapi di sini net tidak boleh apply di dalam insect sebab there is no blood capillary. Jadi pangkah sinilah kasih dash dia. Okay, there is no net. Net tidak boleh pakai. Only large, thin and moist for tracheal. Bila kita membuat explanation tu, itulah kita bagi tahu dulu spiracle is then spiracle connected to the trachea and then trachea branch out become a tracheal and tracheal connected to the body cell, and this tracheal has a large TSA to a volume to V, and then it has a thin and moist surface. Okay, sebab apa? For the efficient gases exchange. Boleh?
Boleh.
Okay. So some of this, you can see there's a label here SX. Kantung udara. Siapa? I'm lost with my pointer. Okay. So SX here means some insects have SX in their trachea system. So what is the function of SX? It's to speed up the delivery of respiratory gas during active body movement. Maksudnya semasa dia bergerak, dia macam squeeze lagi cepat lah itu pergerak gases exchange. Okay, so in this slide you need to know, one, insect have tracheal system. Number 2, tadi itulah branch out dari spiracle, trachea to tracheal, and number 3, applied all this, the adaptation of tracheal. Okay, next. Okay, this is a fish gill, insang ikan, yang zoom in satu lah. Okay, this is the real picture. Before we go to the diagram. So this is a, what we call it, respiratory structure for fish. Okay. Kalau tadi insect respiratory structure dia ialah tracheal atau trachea. Tapi kalau fish, the respiratory structure is gills. Having said that, kalau kita cakap respiratory structure, maksudnya di situlah berlakunya gases exchange. Okay. So meaning that the gases exchange, the diffuse in of oxygen happen in gills, and also diffuse out of carbon dioxide also happen in fish gills. Dan mungkin kamu pernah nampak atau kamu pernah pegang sendiri gills ikan ni atau insang ikan ni sebenarnya banyak, dia bukan satu macam ni. There's a lot of many layers of gills. Okay, so this is a zoom in lah. Contohnya ini, bukan contoh lah, ini ikan, and then bila kita buka operculum ni yang tutup tepi dia tu kan, yang kita boleh selak tu. Operculum tu di bawah dia ada gills. Okay, and then this gills is made up, ada gill arc. Sini gill arc-nya ni. Yang putih ni, tu gill arc that holds together the gills. And then we have filament. Filament ni yang ini, yang macam berus-berus ni. Okay, this is the filament. Alright. So, daripada filament tu lagi, bila zoom in lagi, dia ada lamella. So, to be exact, where's the gases exchange happen? It happens in lamella. Okay, sama macam human kan. Kita tahu gases exchange happen in lung. Tapi bila kita zoom in daripada bronchus, bronchiole and alveolus. It's actually happen at alveolus. Macam itulah maksudnya. Okay, this is the structure. And then what is the adaptation? Alright. So, again, we go back to the adaptation yang list tadi tu kan. Okay, large TSA, TM net. Okay, so we go to this large TSA over volume. Siapa yang large TSA over volume? Okay, this filament, kita ada lamella. Dia berus dia banyak kan. So, sebab dia berus dia banyak, it creates a large TSA over volume. Macam kita compare, saya susah melukis screen sekarang, tapi compare daripada satu ni dengan banyak-banyak macam ni. Mana yang kamu rasa lebih banyak gases exchange berlaku? Of course yang banyak begini kan, sebab dia ada banyak berus. Compare daripada satu berus begini. When I say berus is actually filament. Okay, daripada satu filament, compare dengan banyak filaments, mana yang lagi banyak gases exchange? Of course, yang banyak. So that is why the adaptation, because there's so many filaments, there's a high number of filaments, it will increase the ratio of total surface area over volume. Okay, so they apply yang rule number 1. Alright. And then this filament, again filament lagi, it has a thin and moist. Thin and moist surface. Kamu kena letak thin and moist tu, dia mesti surface. Thin and moist surface. Kenapa? Supaya easy for the oxygen to diffuse in or easy for the carbon dioxide to diffuse out. Alright. Lagi, this filament, or we zoom in, filament, it has a lamella. And you can see here lamella, apa gambar ni? Ini adalah blood capillary, a network of blood capillary. So, they apply yang the last one. Criteria number 4, which is network of blood capillary. Okay, so in this slide, you need to know, first kamu mention dulu apa structure, respiratory structure dalam of a fish. The first one is gill, and gill has gills, bukan gills, and it has a filament. Filament ni, bila filament is made up of lamella. Okay, this filament, it has high number of filament, will create. Okay, kita pergi first criteria. Lepas tu kita pergi, masih lagi filament, kita pergi second and third, which is thin and moist. And then kita cakap pasal lamella, it has a network of blood capillary. Semuanya adalah untuk for for gases exchange to happen efficiently. Yang penting ada words tu lah, efficient gases exchange. Boleh?
Boleh.
Boleh.
Sedih je aku dengar kamu punya respon ni. Okay, next. This is Mr. Frog, Prince Frog here. Okay, you cannot see through apa yang ada di dalam dia, tapi we can see out the outer layer is the skin. Okay, what is the fun facts? Okay, fun facts lah. Fun facts about frog is it can breathe through skin and lungs. Bukan breathe lah, maksudnya gases exchange happen in skin and lungs. Ada dua tempat. Dia bukan macam kita, kalau manusia gases exchange only happen in lungs, tapi this frog here, it happens through it occurs, the gases exchange occurs at two places. The first one is at skin, and then the second one is at the lung. Okay, now so ini di luar, so bila kita zoom in, bukan zoom in lah, bila kita dissect dia, kita bedah dia, kita boleh nampak there's a lung in the frog. Okay, so kenapa dia label these two part here, skin and lungs? Because the gases exchange or the respiratory structure for frog is skin and lungs. Okay, lungs, sebab ada dua. Lungs ni dia ada dua, sebab itu dia ada S. Alright, so this skin, for in an inactive state, the frog uses its skin for gases exchange. Okay, bila waktu yang tidak, waktu yang dia relax, maksudnya dia diam, macam tu inactive state, the frog uses its skin for gases exchange. Okay, and then let's see what are the adaptation. Again, kita pergi kriteria yang 4 tadi, iaitu large TSA, TM, net. Alright, so for skin dia tidak berapa apply di TSA sebab dia hanya covered di luar kan, dia hanya cover di luar, so it doesn't really apply this TSA over volume. Okay, tapi yang dia apply maksudnya adaptation of skin. The adaptation of skin for frog, it has a thin and moist surface. Alright, for thin, the skin is thin and permeable to respiratory gases. When we said respiratory gases, okay, ada banyak istilah. Respiratory gases, apa dia? Can you give me what are the respiratory gases?
Oxygen.
Oxygen and?
Carbon dioxide.
Yes, correct. So, the skin must be thin, so it's permeable. Permeable maksudnya boleh lalu, ada bagi permission lah. Permeable to gases, respiratory gases. Lepas tu, the skin must be in a moist state, ataupun the moist skin, it allows the respiratory gases to dissolve. Dia dissolve dulu barulah dia diffuse lah. And then net. Net tadi apa? Network of blood capillary beneath the skin. Di bawah skin ni, there are many networks of blood capillary. Kenapa perlu ada network blood of capillary? To transport the respiratory gases or for to increase the gases exchange. Okay, jadi kamu boleh, kita sudah bincang 3, so kamu boleh nampak dia punya repetition ni semua akan guna this criteria, and then alasan dia sama saja, for to allow respiratory gases ataupun to increase the efficiency of gases exchange. Ayat dia pusing-pusing tu saja. Yang penting ada word efficient gases exchange. Okay. Alright, itu skin. Macam mana dengan lungs? What are the adaptation? Okay, adaptation kita tengok dia apply ke tidak large TSA over volume TM net ni. Okay, so for lung, the lung is folded. Dia berlipat-lipat. Okay, the lung is folded so that it will have a large TSA, total surface area over volume. Bila dia ada large TSA, lagi banyaklah surface untuk berlaku gases exchange. Okay, it must have a large TSA of volume for the gases exchange and then thin. Yes, the lung has a thin membrane as one cell thick, setebal satu sel sahaja. For what? For the diffusion of respiratory gases. For the gases exchange. Pusing-pusing lah ayat mana yang kamu suka guna. Respiratory gases exchange, diffusion of gases exchange pun boleh. Diffusion of respiratory gases pun boleh. Okay, moist. Apa yang moist lung? Again, lung has a moist surface. Untuk apa? For respiratory gases to dissolve in them. Okay, untuk moist ni dia special sikit lah. Kamu, keyword yang kena ada bila kamu mau guna fakta moist ni, whenever the surface is moist, it need to be moist. The surface need to be moist in order for the gases to dissolve. Mesti guna perkataan dissolve. Alright? And then net. Lung and net, meaning that in the lung, there's a network of blood capillaries. Kenapa perlu ada network blood capillaries? To transport respiratory gases. Biasa sebab blood capillary ni function dia untuk transport kan, untuk menghantar. So kita stick to words tu bila kita cakap pasal network blood capillary, kita mesti ada perkataan to transport respiratory gases. So sepanjang ni kamu akan nampak pattern dia sama saja, cuma berbeza respiratory structure. Okay, so again for frogs, apa respiratory structure dia? Class?
Large TSA.
No, the respiratory structure dia apa?
Skin.
Skin?
And lungs.
Yes, skin and lungs. Okay, lepas tu kalau kamu mau hurai what are the adaptation, guna ini sebagai guidelines kamu. Boleh?
Boleh.
Boleh.
Okay, last but not least is for the human. Okay. So human, sebelum kita pergi zoom in, pergi alveolus, of course, you know, this is our lung. Don't get confused lung and with your heart. Jantung. Jantung satu saja tapi lung ada dua. Okay, so this is lung. Bila zoom in lagi. Okay, so this trachea branch out become bronchus, bronchiole, and then bila zoom in lagi jadi alveolus. Yang the terminal one, paling hujung alveolus. Okay, ni kamu nampak dia ada macam urat-urat di. This is a network. Jaring kan, net of blood capillaries. Okay, now mari kita discuss. So our respiratory structure is our lung. To be exact is the alveolus. Boleh? Kamu perasan kah setiap yang kita bincang, kita mesti tahu dulu apa dia punya respiratory structure, lepas tu baru kita tengok dia punya adaptation. Okay. So this is our alveolus here. Branch out daripada bronchiole, alveolus, and then later on, there's a alveolus is being covered with the blood capillaries. Okay. Mari kita discuss TSA over V, TM net. Macam mana kita mau guna what are the ni. Sekarang kita hanya fokus pada alveolus. So alveolus, kita tahu dia ada loop macam ni kan. Ada banyak. So meaning that a large number of alveolus will provide a large TSA over V. Okay, this is the first criteria. Large number of alveolus ni ada banyak, it will create a large ratio TSA over V. Alright, kenapa perlu ada large ni? Again, ini untuk melengkapkan ayat kamu tu. Sebab is for the diffusion of respiratory gases. Alright, siapa mau cuba? Saya bagi kamu 1 minit, nanti saya panggil nama. Tolong cikgu huraikan TM net ni. Okay, alveolus T, alveolus M, alveolus net. Saya bagi 1 minit, tolong fikirkan dia punya ayat tu. Kita apply one by one criteria. Teacher sudah explain tadi about this alveolus. Untuk kriteria pertama, large TSA over V. This alveolus is large in number, sebab itu dia provide a large TSA over V. Sekarang alveolus T, M, net ni teacher mau dari kamu yang tolong huraikan. Okay, kita volunteer dululah. Biasa volunteer dulu. Siapa mau huraikan yang T?
Saya.
Okay, silakan.
Sekarang teacher.
Iyalah sekarang.
The large number of alveoli provides a large total surface area for the diffusion of respiratory gases.
Itu yang first one. I want the T. T stand for thin, nipis.
Oh, thin.
Boleh?
Oh. The alveoli is thin, so it is the diffusion of respiratory gases.
Okay. So yang thin tu actually the surface ataupun the membrane. Okay, kamu kena bagi tahu apa yang thin. Okay, the membrane atau the surface of alveolus. Okay, in this case kamu cakap alveoli sebab banyak kan. The wall ataupun the membrane, the surface of alveolus is thin, thick as one cell, it has a one cell thick. Okay, ayat yang di belakang tu, so that the diffusion of gases ataupun the diffusion of respiratory gases is more efficient. Much easier. Okay, good. Thank you. And M. Siapa mau coba? Okay, boleh.
The alveolus wall is moist to allow the oxygen and carbon dioxide to diffuse through the walls into the blood capillaries.
Okay, good. So M is for moist. Okay, you didn't mention the surface, but it's okay because you already mentioned the alveolus wall. Okay, jangan alveolus saja. You need to mention which part of alveolus. Is it the surface? Is it the wall? Okay, so you said alveolus wall is moist, correct? Kalau tidak ada wall pun, the alveolus surface is moist pun boleh. Okay, dan tadi dissolve easily. Itu yang penting, ada perkataan dissolve. Alright, the last one, network. Siapa mau cuba? Okay.
The alveolus is surrounded by a large network of blood capillaries to hasten the diffusion of respiratory gases.
Okay, so this alveolus surrounded by a large network of blood capillaries. Okay, so that the diffusion of respiratory gases will much efficient. Okay, boleh diterima. Okay, boleh nampak pattern dia?
Boleh.
Boleh kan? Yang penting kamu stick to this criteria. Large TSA over V, TM net. Okay. Now we go to the last, I think this is the last slide. Yes. The comparison. Again, for comparison, we need to mention the similarities and the differences. So there's a four. There are 3 animals and 1 human here. So between these 4 organism yang kita discuss tadi, the similarity, yang the first one similarity dia tadi itulah yang keempat-empat kita guna 4 kriteria kan. Apa kriteria dia? All the respiratory structure. Ingat, bear in mind now we're discussing about respiratory structure, have a large ratio of total surface for efficient exchange. Lepas tu kita juga cakap pasal T, iaitu thin. All respiratory structure are thin. This makes the diffusion of respiratory gases much faster. Okay. Ayat belakang ni kalau kamu perasan, dia sebenarnya semua mau cakap pasal pasal gases exchange, diffusion of respiratory gases. Sebab itu kamu kena biasakan buat ayat, guna ayat kamu sendiri. So you will familiar with the vocabulary. Alright, kamu goreng ayat macam mana pun, tapi kamu goreng dengan betul. Bukan kamu hangus gitu saja. Alright, so that is the second similarity. The third one, moist. Okay, all respiratory structure are moist to allow respiratory gases to dissolve in them. Tadi moist mesti ada perkataan dissolve. Siapa yang dissolve? Respiratory gases. Okay, and the fourth one is the respiratory structure is complete, ataupun kamu boleh buat ayat sendiri. The respiratory structure has a network of blood capillary, tapi mesti accept insects. Insects dia tiada blood kan? Kenapa perlu ada network blood of capillary? Again, perkataan blood itu maksudnya transport. So, to allow the efficient transport of respiratory gases. Ataupun kalau kamu buat ayat sendiri, to allow the transport of respiratory gases much faster. Okay? Okay, differences. So, differences, 1, 2, 3, 4. Dia bagi 2 karakteristik. Of course, each of these organism, they have their own respiratory structure. Setiap satu ada, masing-masing. Untuk insect, dia punya respiratory structure ialah tracheal. Untuk fish, it has a filament and lamella. Kalau frogs, skin and lungs. Kalau human, alveolus. Okay. Again, my question here is, what do you understand with the word respiratory structure? Apa maksud respiratory structure tadi? Teacher ada explain. Kelas?
Yang dia punya lungs semua tu.
So actually, kenapa? Then if you said lung, why human? Dia tidak mention respiratory structure dia lung. Kenapa dia mention alveolus?
Sebab tu yang serap oksigen.
Yes. So actually respiratory structure ni is where the gases exchange occur, take place. Okay, they mau to be exact location di mana berlakunya respiratory gases exchange happen. Ingat tak ada 2 term lah yang jangan confuse. Satu respiratory structure, maksudnya tempat di mana berlakunya tu. And then satu lagi respiratory gases. Respiratory gases ni maksudnya gas tu lah. Gas untuk kita bernafas, which is oxygen input. Kalau output dia pula ialah carbon dioxide. Boleh?
Boleh.
Okay. So the differences lagi satu, how the large ratio of total surface area to volume for the respiratory structure is achieved. Maksudnya, macam mana dia increase, how this respiratory structure adapt to increase the large number of TSA over V. Kalau kita tengok satu-satu, kalau insect dia ada tracheole. Jadi to increase the TSA, it must have a large number of tracheole. Kalau fish, macam mana dia increase the TSA? Large number of filament and lamella. Kan, kalau frogs pula, the surface in the lungs is folded and overall skin surface. Okay, maksudnya overall skin surface ni seluruhnya, bukan bahagian atas sahaja yang happen the gases exchange, di bahagian bawah pun the whole body lah, the whole body of the frog covered by skin, and then the gases exchange occur overall skin surface. Kalau human pula, it has a large, the respiratory structure is alveolus. Then how to increase the TSA over V? By having a large number of alveoli. Alveolus tu singular. Kalau banyak, kita panggil alveoli, plural. Okay. Jadi, table ni sangat, orang cakap, dia sangat komplit sudah. Untuk supaya kamu nampak betul-betul the differences and the similarities. And then it helps you to understand kalau dia punya respiratory structure dia tracheal, then untuk increase kasih banyak sajalah tracheal macam tu. Boleh?
Boleh.
Okay.